9/11 happened, we had to print money out of that. Printing money, printing money. And it seems like that's our only answer to the fiscal problem that we have, is just print money to pay our own debt. I hate to think that that's the answer.
You should probably look at virtually every investment as a long-term investment. And if you get the opportunity to get out in 3 or 5 years with a huge win, then fine, do that. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Jon Wells, a Colorado native with 25 plus years in real estate sales and investing. He's helped clients achieve financial success in Denver's market by averaging $10 million in annual sales since 2010. So, Jonathan, you've got a ton of interesting stuff on this bio. I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of it, but like I said, I like it to come from your words. And I, of course, want to start with a thank you. Thanks for being on the show today. Thanks for taking the time out to chat with me. Definitely excited to dive in and learn more about you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. 400 podcasts, so I'm lucky to be here. And excited to dive in. So
it's been a few years, so we're still going strong, and thankful to all the great guests that you now join those ranks. So thank you for taking the time out today, and let's just start by hearing about your background, and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. So I got into real estate actually. Well, my dad was a real estate developer, so I've been kind of brainwashed by real estate as a kid. And my grandfather on my mom's side was a realtor in the UK, and my uncle retired from being a realtor probably when he was 40 years old. But he did some big deals, and so real estate has been in the blood for a lot of years. And so when I had my son in 1993, I decided I needed to get serious about something, and I ended up just getting my real estate license kind of by mid 90s. So just dove in, speaking the language, doing the deal. I was originally a mortgage broker, saving people from going to foreclosure with, Long Beach Mortgage, which was, an affiliate of WAMU, Washington Mutual. All those companies are belly up by now, So back in the day, that's what I was doing. And, kind of got a knack for helping people. And then when mortgages required licensing, I decided to be a full-time realtor. Not soon after that, I was investing in flipping properties and kind of doing the deal. Every little caveat that I do in real estate, you kind of go down this rabbit hole, and you either have to learn a new language, set aside a lot more time that's usually not available, or you end up retroing back, to, what was normal before. And so I've always been a realtor, always sold properties. I learned from clients, they learned from me, and I've just kind of ratcheted up from smaller single family to group homes to commercial deals in the last 20 plus years.
Nice. Well, you 20 plus years, so you've been through some cycles. That's always, I think, some hard lessons to be learned, but also if you can survive those downturns, then I think the people that come out the other side generally are quite a bit more I don't know if they're more successful, but more prepared for any future headwinds. So tell me a little. So your main focus is realtor. I heard you mention, I saw it in the bio, kind of the group home type setting. So are you? This is maybe ignorance. Did that fall into residential or commercial real estate? It's kind of somewhere in the middle.
It's weird. Yeah, it doesn't even have an asset class. You're familiar with CoStar. So when we report a sale, so these group homes, technically they're residential, but they're large residential. They have hundreds of units, hundreds of beds. So, if you go over a certain number of beds, I think it's like 15 in certain, like in Colorado, I think it's 15 beds and higher, then it's a commercial property. 15 beds and lower, it's considered residential. So mostly I've been focusing on the residential group home, but I look at it like a business, that's renting from you. And so I've got 5 group homes. And I think that's sort of if I had a claim to fame in real estate, it's that I made the choice of going from, single family rental, and your typical renter, to having a business rent my property. And so they required me to buy bigger and bigger properties. So I've got properties that are way bigger than the home I live in, and I would never be able to afford it without them. So it's a win-win. And, so it's very similar to vetting a GP, as an
Mhm.
LP. You have
Yep.
to vet your group home operator to make sure that they are solvent and can pay the bills and manage the property. And so I started getting into that in 2017, when I first met my first group home operator, and they subsequently bought. Well, I helped get them into 4 other properties. So they rent 4 group homes, and I have one in the Springs, Color Springs, with a different operator. And then I sort of ran out of money, so I haven't decided to syndicate that idea, mostly because interest rates make it still unaffordable, even for, group home operators, unless they're getting grants and, a lot of subsidies out there like Medicaid. But it's been a great, ride, but now my loans are adjusting. And so I kind of find myself in LP land, looking for a place to put my money, vetting GPs and meeting new, syndicators and stuff to try to figure out how to make more than 8% or
Right.
whatever you make in the
Right.
market.
The the group home, and I guess my exposure to it, I've seen things about what the sober living, or the other asset class that seems to be pretty hot right now is senior housing. And I know there's different levels of that sort of the different levels of care, and depending on, I guess, the level of care required for whatever type of group housing it is, there's it becomes more. It's always a business, but it becomes more and more of a business where you have, if you have healthcare staff and things like that on hand. Tell me a little. So I want to understand kind of specifically how you're in that asset class. So you've owned the properties and you're leasing them to the operator. Is that, am
Yeah.
I okay?
Yeah, so I've never been on the operation side, except for a little while with my main operator. We owned what's called an IOP, because they're in the recovery space. So IOP stands for intensive outpatient. So we had a retail location, and people would come for group counseling, and they would come in for individual counseling, group counseling. So they're in the recovery and world, and they are recovered themselves. So most of the group home operators that I've dealt with were originally, recovery, or they're currently recovering from being addicted, or had some sort of mental illness or whatever. And so it's an interesting field because of the protected class status that those group homes have and the operators have. So pretty much anybody that is coming down on that location or that operator, if they're we had one location that was literally getting signage outside of it to say, we don't want you here, and that is a big no. It's a federal violation. That individual, even though he was the president of the HOA of that neighborhood, just didn't want us there. And we were halfway through a large remodel of this property. He knew what we were going to do, and we didn't know that's who it was, but he was right next door. And I'm sure that he was the one putting out these signs that we don't want this group home in the area, discriminating 100%. Like, he would have just lost, but it would have also cost about $50,000 to show that he was guilty of discrimination. So nobody really wants it in their neighborhood. But when I've gone to visit all the group homes that I have, they're either in better condition that I've shown that I originally rented for. So this is something that you want as a landlord, but better, as good or better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Condition when you open the door to them. And you hardly really can tell unless there's just multiple cars. So it just looks like a regular rental, and having multiple people there. So for me, it was a good financial decision, because they are the operator, they are the property manager, they are the maintenance manager, and you don't get calls at night. You don't get calls on the weekend or when you're on vacation. So it's been a really good ride, honestly.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
Great. So effectively like a master lease. It's just you
Very much like that. Yeah.
own it and someone else is managing everything. So that's I think that those are, in terms of being, hands off, it's you've got to do a lot of work on the front end to vet that operator and make sure that, they're in position to be successful. But ultimately, then once it goes, as you said, you don't have to, you're not handling the traditional, tenants, termites, and toilets thing that people worry about in the real estate world. So you're buying those properties with the intent to use them as a group home in a group home setting, right? This is like, are you partnering up with the operator and going out and looking at what would be like the viable options? I guess as a realtor, you have access to those as well.
Yeah. That's how it's been historically. So we would literally go shopping. One of the bigger operators out there that actually created the space is Oxford House. It's a national company, nonprofit company that proved to the world, that being addicted or having addiction recovery issues is a disability. And because of that, it opened, they won the Supreme Court case. And then from there, that allowed other operators to get into the space and not have to, be shut down because the neighbors didn't like it or the city wasn't going to allow it or whatever. So for me, it was a very smart move. It was, I needed the passive part of real estate, that's my intro. And now I'm looking at, other types of passive investing. So getting into the GP vetting and finding the teams that I want to, probably do some downsizing just because I have those group homes. The equity has gone up dramatically since 17, 18. And so now I've got a top heavy investment and the loans are adjusting and they don't want me to increase rent and I don't really want to have that battle, And so It's not sustainable, unfortunately, with the interest rates the way that they are. They'll pay the rent, but they're going to complain all the way. And I just don't, I don't want to put up with a tenant that's not happy.
Yeah. So you're saying the loans that you bought these properties with was adjustable. It was like a 5-1 arm or something like that.
It was a dumb decision, honestly. I didn't know I'd be doing this for 10 years,
right.
But the markets are odd. And, once you're in. And if I'd have done 30-year mortgages, I would stay with the group homes and take my cash flow and be happy. But three out of the 5 are literally going to be breaking even here within the next 6 to 12 months. And so who wants to have a break even, investment? So with a ton of equity, tons of equity. So time to redeploy and, create a different avenue, for the financial freedom piece.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Do you, as a realtor, work with investors, people who are looking for investment properties? Is that a part of your
that's
expertise?
Since 2010, that's been the main thing. Like I said, we've done just about every type of real estate investment, whether it was a fix and flip or, we've done commercial syndications at our office. We've done storage syndications. We've done group home syndications. Some of the group homes are, 100 unit, locations. So they're not just the regular single family home around the block. They're commercial flavored and have the big sign in the front yard and, commercial. So for me, it was a bit of a challenge going from, selling a single unit, property and telling somebody they can build equity and build your retirement by owning a bunch of individual units to, the scenario that we're doing now, which is group home investing. So I like it. It is a feel good investment because it feels like you're doing the right thing, and you can
Right.
make a better environment for people that really need a good environment, whether they're older, aging, needing more attention than they've needed to be able to help get their shoes on, or change their clothes or whatever, um, and or mobility issues. So I've kind of dealt with all the types of group homes that are out there, um, and all the different types of operators. It's been a great experience. I'm having a hard time scaling because there's only so many quality operators, and then they eventually start to be able to buy their own stuff. So it's a weird model, honestly. I think I'm in transition right now, as far
Yeah.
as where I really want to focus, and I'm excited to dive into all types of syndication. So I had a mentorship in the multifamily world for the last year. Didn't decide to buy, thank God. I mean, or it was just such a difficult environment. People are having to, you know, um, underwrite 1,000 properties to maybe buy one or two. I don't know if that's your experience, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's been hard to make anything pencil out. And I mean, obviously it depends on the asset class. There's been, as you said, you've had good success with the group home environment. I've heard a lot about other people having similar success in that space. I don't, but interestingly, I think the point you've mentioned in terms of your loans, it's I keep through the podcast, through my own experiences, I just keep hearing and having this like pounded home that the debt is maybe the number one factor in success of a real estate asset, right? Like you
right,
have, depends how much debt you have. It depends what type of rate you have. It depends on the length of the loan. There's so many different things that most people who are, they're looking to buy a house, just their own personal residence. They are out there and they're going to see like that their options are a 30-year loan or a 15-year loan. And maybe they see fixed rate and maybe they see adjustable, but what actually exists in the world of especially commercial real estate is almost like an infinite number of possibilities. And there's all kinds of different lenders where, you wouldn't even probably know they exist, because most people, again, that are taking out a mortgage are going to whatever their local bank is that they typically bank with. They might go to Wells Fargo or Bank of America or whatever and say, I need a loan. And this is the place I've always banked with. But when you're looking at commercial real estate, that lending piece, and that's, an actual loan from a some sort of debt provider, but you also can talk about the equity and I mean, there's all so many different ways and sort of, like I said, almost infinite ways to mix and match your capital stack. And so it's a fascinating subject, and it's also maybe an easy place for people to get in trouble, right? Because you talked about it. Well, I didn't know I'd be doing this 10 years later. And so in that scenario, maybe adjustable rates make sense. And we had, historically low interest rates a couple years ago. And so people thought that was great. And I was at some of those conferences and people thought they were going to continue to go down almost indefinitely until we had interest rates of zero or negative interest rates. And then next thing you know, we have, the interest rates double in the span of a year. We have, the most aggressive interest rate hikes in the history. So you just don't know. That's the reality, is you just don't know. And so you have to, maybe we should always try to learn from these types of environments and how you might do things differently. And I just think in a lot of ways it does come down to the debt structure. And I'd love to get your take on that topic. Like, okay,
yeah.
Here I am now, I'm looking to get out of these properties and maybe do something different, but what kinds of things might you have done differently now,
Right.
looking back?
True. Very good question. Yeah, so if there's a rule, so if I create a rule, it would be, one that my mentor talks about. I have a mentor for since 2010 um, in the real estate world, and the rule is don't put short-term debt on a long-term asset, and vice versa. You don't want long-term debt on a short-term asset because there's hurdles and prepayment penalties and all types of
Right.
stuff we deal with.
Right.
So that's the rule. But yeah, I mean, we had I think it was two decades of historical low rates. Ever since probably 2000 was the beginning of 2001. Right?
Right.
So 9/11 happened. We had to print money out of that. Printing money. And it seems like that's our only answer, to the fiscal, problem that we have is just print money to pay our own debt. I hate to think that that's the answer. I'd love to get an economist, in office that can actually figure out how to fix, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it was all the way back. It was probably the Clinton era, with just-in-time policy, where I think that was the only era that I can think of that had a balanced budget, national budget. And so who'd have thunk, and so here we are, $37 trillion in debt. And so, yeah, I don't know where interest rates and inflation goes, but I feel sorry for Jerome Powell and the job that he has to try to figure out, how we're going to safely navigate through, a soft landing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I've just been kind of going off on a tangent.
Well, yeah, I think I mean, it is a relevant tangent, but I guess maybe what that points to is one of the lessons is we don't know. We just
Yeah, you really don't
know what's going to happen. And again, it's like I sat at a very prominent real estate conference and listened to people talk about, interest rates were going to continue to go down, and we're already like under 3% for our commercial loans, and how they were going to continue to go down, and we're going to and what I've come to realize over these last few years is the number of times I've heard from someone who I would someone I would consider a more of an expert than myself will say definitively X is going to happen. Y is going to happen on this date. Interest rates are coming. I mean, people have been saying interest rates were going to come back down for
a couple of years,
2 years now. Like and it's like they're saying it again. We're supposed to have a rate reduction. Basically, I mean, by the time this comes out, we will already know if that happened. But the reality is you just don't know, and so I think you have to operate with that mentality. Is like
right.
you should probably look at virtually every investment as a long-term investment. Like unless you're in the stock market, you're not taking out loans to buy stocks usually, as a retail investor. But yeah, in real estate, you should look at it as I'm going to hold this for 10 years, 20 years. And if you get the opportunity to get out in 3 or 5 years with a huge win, then fine, do that. But you do have to think about, you just don't want to be, you never want to be forced to sell something. I think that's ultimately the thing that I found maybe is the simplest way to explain what people experienced in the 2008 crash, what people have experienced since 2022. Right. Being forced to sell is a bad spot to be in. Like that's just
historically in Denver, because this market's been kind of on a tear for 2 decades, right? The only time properties that came on the market were when somebody was either forced to sell because they're relocating, or forced to sell because of divorce, or forced to sell, for whatever reasons. And so I think we're used to only seeing, sellers because they have some outlying reason other than I'm ready to try something new, so I kind of have the luxury of, saying I want to try something new. I could refi and then, take a big haircut on the cash flow. But when you look at syndications and, if you look at the returns on equity that I'm looking at, I'm in the, well into the single digits, like 4 or 5%, I could, take that money and stick it in the bank and make the same amount of money,
Right.
So I'm really enjoying the learning to vet and learning all the different opportunities that are out there. That's really my focus right now, is getting to know as many, GPs as I can find, and, different vehicles and alternative investing, vehicles. So, and luckily I came up with this issue, a couple of years ago, where I realized, man, I got a lot of equity in these places. And when those loans start to adjust, when the reality hit that they're going to go a lot higher, I started looking around, and it's just, I think it's a great place to be able to, say, hey, there's a lot of opportunities. And then you just got to figure out, well, where do I go and find the best opportunities in this really large private equity space that's out there, that you're in, that you do,
Yeah, I do. I think there's been a lot of, I guess, creativity happening, a lot of people looking at like alternative assets and things like that. I want to push back on one thing you said just a little bit, because I think it's just an important thing for people to understand how it all ties together. You mentioned, oh, if I'm getting 4 or 5% in this asset, but I could just put that in the bank and get the same. The high yield savings accounts that we have right now are also going to go down when interest rates go down. So I think people don't, because this is a thing. Like, I did this was back in whatever, like you said, the interest rates have been very low for 2 decades. There was a time when there was a big talk about, I can't remember exactly the years, but early 2000s, where it was like big talk about high interest savings accounts. And so I put money in one that was 4.5%, kind of like it is now. And then it was down below 1%, as over time, as interest rates came down. So those things tie together too. So people you just have to look, you have to notice that, oh, I put this in at this time, but that may not be relevant anymore in, if rate cuts come, those rate cuts also hit our high yield savings accounts. So it's kind of, I guess I'm not really pushing back on you. I'm just trying to let people understand, there's a whole bunch of different ways. This is why people say inflation is actually good when you own hard assets, because those value, there's just learning how it all ties together, learning that you don't know what's going to happen, and trying to have a truly conservative approach to it. All of that is putting all that together is that's the work. That's why people, investors can make great wealth, is if you can put all those pieces together. And so I think, even in 2021, 2022, everybody was trying to underwrite conservatively, but ultimately, in order to make deals work, the leverage had to go up. And so we had low interest rates, but so because of that, there was a lot of demand, and it just all ties together. And I think if you're going to get in the space, is just understanding a little bit how it all ties together. And when I get the opportunity, I'm very lucky to talk to people on this podcast about these very topics. And the people that went through the 2008 crash and were in real estate then and are still in real estate, the perspective that they have is about what's going on now is just fascinating. It's a very different outlook than those that maybe just got into commercial real estate, in 2018 or something like that. It's just going through these things. If you can survive them and learn the lessons, you will be better coming out the other side, and you'll
if nothing else, be better prepared, for when the opportunity, arises, and you have, dry powder, waiting, because you kind of saw something coming. But yeah, I learned a ton just from listening to podcasts and, different people that have been, investing for a long, long period of time. talking about the transitions in the market, and when an opportunity comes up, they're able to somehow grab these pieces of the puzzle and put them together. And the people that can put the puzzle together the quickest or the most efficiently are the ones that are going to end up with extremely good returns. And so, yeah, nobody really wants to just be satisfied, other than maybe the baby boomers that really wanted to have those 4% savings returns over the last 20 years, but they didn't. And so I'm just I'm curious, because I haven't had a ton of conversations with the baby boomer generation about what they did with all their savings, because they like to save. I mean, they are the saving generation. And did they take risks, or did that extend their investment thesis, where they had to continue to stay more active, investing and doing more risky things? Like what you're doing, and what I'm doing, and what I'm looking to do more of is taking calculated risks. And you have to do that unless you're going to be okay with 4%, and then you're kind of slipping in a hole because of inflation. So. It is a very interesting, conversation to try to figure out.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's a topic that you come at from so many different angles, and I think the baby boomer piece is interesting, because I think a lot of that generation had or has some level of pension, or they had and a lot of them own businesses, and a lot of them it's just different. It's just different than my generation, or the generations behind me. Like it's another piece of that puzzle. I think you said it so well. You said, like, who's going to put the puzzle pieces together the quickest? And you will have to take some risk ultimately. And I think the disadvantage is really for the younger generations. I think younger generations, because of just the state of where we are, you talked about the national debt, like younger generations are probably actually going to have to take bigger risks than the older generations did to have a big upside.
A chance.
Right? Like I think
they do have a lot of headwinds, and so many kind of national, crises, during my son's lifetime. I think it was, I mean, we had all of them. Right. Every single crisis that you could come up with, we've lived through it over the last 20 years. And the result was just print more money. And I would love to know that there's an alternative to that. But as far as I've heard, listening to lots of pundits, economists and everything else, nobody has an answer to the money printer. Maybe Bitcoin. Maybe Bitcoin's the answer, but that's a scary answer too.
I don't know. I hesitate to even try to dive into those topics, because I'm not an economist, but again, like what I've seen from economists, people I believe are much smarter than me, has been guesses at best. Just guesses. We think this is going to happen, and it doesn't happen.
And,
or we do this, and
and so who can guess the best? And who can predict the best? I love listening to it. It's like I listen to economists all day long, because I think they all sort of have some merit. They all have different theses of where we're headed and why we're headed, but there is some very similar tangents. We're all on the same tangent, waiting for interest rates to drop, and that's going to change the market. Well, one of the PhDs that I listen to, he believes that we haven't hit the bottom of the inflationary cycle yet. And so, similar to what happened in September when we dropped rates, the long-term yield actually went up, or the long-term bonds went up, and the 10-year went up. And so, our mortgage interest rates went up, bank rates went down, which is helpful for commercial, but in the residential world, it didn't help. It's less affordable now than it was in September 24. And he thinks that it could go the other way, but he said that if you time it perfectly with the scare of a recession, and with the job numbers and stuff, that somehow those will blend together into the exact right time, and then we have this beautiful soft landing. It's like, oh my God, here we go, people.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, it's going to be it'll be interesting. We'll see. Yeah, so much there. But anyway, let me let me shift gears, John. I want to make sure I have time to ask you the questions I ask every guest. And the first one is just based on the name of the show, being Know Your Why. So what is your why? What is your, we talked a lot about the uncertainty of economic cycles. Right. But what is your why? What keeps you, sort of going with all of this, I don't want to say fear that you have, just, there's a lot to consider as we move forward, and you're talking about, offloading some assets and getting into another asset. So what kind of keeps you motivated when things get hard?
Right. Well, I mean, it really boils down to, a lot of songs that are going through my head right now, but it's about, who you want to be with, when you get older or when you're frail or whatever, but who do you want around you more often? And it's usually the answer is family or friends or the reconstruction of a family in today's, world. But in order to get there, you have to have time freedom and ultimately, financial freedom. And so my why right now, and I don't think it changes necessarily, but my why is just to create enough passive income to where I can do the things I want to do when I want to do them. Go see the world, go see culture, go enjoy the food, go enjoy the people. And, also when I find those things that I enjoy the most, figure out a way to enjoy them full time, so one of the things on the horizon for me is to not just surround myself around the people that I want to be around, but, find a culture that I completely relate to and that I can just dive into. And, whether it's here or there or in this country or in another country, to me, that's finding peace and happiness. And so that's my why, is just to continue pushing till I get there and keep an open mind.
Yeah. I love it. That's great. When people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
So Jon Wells Realtor on LinkedIn, just no H in my name. So Jon Wells Realtor. And then I have some freebies I can send you to put in your links. Okay. One of them is how to fire yourself in 6 steps, running away from the W-2 man, that you work for.
Yeah.
So get to financial freedom as fast as possible.
That's right. Yeah, no, we'll definitely put your contact in the show notes and whatever else if you want to send us, we'll get that.
Yeah, it's been great. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm glad I could be part of the many. I strive to one day have a podcast of my own.
Great. I wish you luck, and I thank you for coming on this one today. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate having you here. So thank you so much. And to folks listening, make sure you connect with Jon. And please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get more great guests. As always, thank you for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?